the past few years, podcasts have become an extremely important part of popular culture. It seems like everyone today is trying to make their big break into the neo-radio market by sitting around with a few friends and cracking jokes while talking about current events for an hour a week. I mean, how hard can it really be? What these people don't realize is that to have a successful podcast, you don't really need any of the typical easy-to-read-off tips to be extremely popular. While things like good audio quality and consistency are helpful and shouldn't be scoffed at, what really makes a podcast is the dynamic between the people on the show, their personalities, their opinions, and how these people interact is above all else what is going to draw in listeners. This factor, being the most important in any show, is exactly what most small YouTuber podcasts lack. It's exactly what made the Baited podcast so successful, and what led to its unfortunate demise. This is the story of the rise, the fall, and the decay of the Baited podcast.
That's not what I did at all! How fucking dare you!
So, most likely, he didn't edit the fucking podcast.
And then you kept indirectly retweeting people that are like, oh, look at this point in time, the subs flew the fuck up, what the fuck is this?
And it's probably not gonna come out tomorrow, and it's probably not gonna come out the day after that, because Clown is constantly fucking failing everyone. What do you know? Colossal is crazy, has failed us again.
Keemstar is basically fucking Hitler.
You've been called a whore, a prostitute, but also now a pedo.
Extra money, and it wouldn't have been extra money for him. It would actually have been extra money for me if Keem was telling the truth, and he wasn't.
I'm fucking glad he's gone. Good riddance. I wish he just died in the army.
While the commentary community as we know it was born in 2015, it really came into its own in 2016, solidifying a solid cast of characters into the minds of viewers. With many creators having overlapping audiences eating up all of their daily uploads, the idea of a collaborative business venture became a very attractive way to make money. And no one likes making and finding money more than
$100 in the woods. And I'm feeling so goddamn good!
In 2016, Keemstar was easily the most hated person among commentators. A number of controversies had turned viewers against him as a person, spearheaded by the Content Cop by iDubbbz. But regardless of the hate for Keemstar, it was and still is undeniable that he isn't going anywhere anytime soon. He consistently posts content that gets millions of views, and no matter how many times people try to expose him and drag his name through the mud, the guy just doesn't quit. In 2016, he set his sights on making a podcast specifically for a commentary audience. While today this may seem cliche, at the time it was unheard of, and many were unsure if it would even work. As early as May of 2016, Keem was talking about wanting to create a show, and decided to ask his audience who they would like to see co-hosting. While many of the suggestions, like Leafy and Grade A Under A, were interesting, ultimately Keemstar decided to go for a different dynamic for the show. But who would want to be on a podcast with Keemstar?
Drop it.
Colossal has long been seen as one of the most respected people in the commentary community, and in 2016, this was mostly due to a small library of videos that he had posted, which received widespread attention. Videos about people like Lionmaker, Basherverse, and infamously FouseyTube led to him climbing the ranks of the community and being revered as someone who was extremely underrated. As competent and talented as iDubbbz, while not as well known, he also had amicable connections with almost all of the YouTube community, making him an almost brand-friendly face for the show. Sure, Keemstar was mean and evil, but Colossal was liked by pretty much everyone. People would actually be able to take the show and its conversation seriously instead of writing it off as just Keemstar's podcast. With Keemstar and Colossal playing the two opposing sides of the field, one being seen as the moral good and the other being seen as a YouTube supervillain, there had to be someone to balance them out. Tommy C was a small YouTuber at the time, with just over 1,000 subscribers, with a more unique format to YouTube drama. Whereas most people would just post videos every day or every other day where they called out various YouTubers, Tommy effectively created a radio show for drama that he streamed live to his channel every day, called Shot from the Point. He had been extremely critical of Keemstar in the past, but was not someone who seemed to outright detest him, and his role on the podcast became that of mediator between Clown and Keem, as well as the resident laugh track. His experience in the streaming and podcast format also made him the perfect pick for a smaller content creator to collaborate with. He already knew the medium, he had been doing it for years. Now all he had to do was apply his skills.
Myself, and along with Colossal is Crazy the Clown, that we will be starting the new Baited podcast, as you can see right here. And as a lot of you know that I've been talking about it a lot lately, this has been a tremendous opportunity for me, and this has been a crazy 14 days or so. I am absolutely honored and excited about what this podcast can bring, and the fact that I can bring my sort of wise-ass East Coast personality to a broader audience. This is this could be really great.
With the cast assembled, the podcast was ready to begin. While most podcasts market themselves as a group of friends getting together every week, Baited was unique in that Keemstar and Clown were two people who vehemently disagreed on almost every subject and often argued with him. Colossal talked about this on an episode of I Hate Everything's Jarcast, where he noted that him being picked for the show was a deliberate move by Keem to make it more interesting.
I don't know, but Alex is right. It's that's the thing. It's a great dynamic. Like Keemstar and I disagree on just about everything. Like, we're two very, very different people, and Tommy is there as a mediatory to just laugh like a fucking jackal while all this shit is going on.
His laugh
That's why it
is
works.
something else.
Perfect, yeah.
It is something.
When he was asked if he regretted doing the show due to the backlash he received for it, he responded that he didn't at all and felt it was a good move for him in the end.
I actually have a question here from Zaptai, of all people, asking, do you regret agreeing to the beta podcast? Because you got a lot of shit for it.
I don't think anybody faults me for it now. And
if anything, it's helped you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I thought back then, like, I was doing it for entertainment purposes, to entertain myself mostly, and also to entertain others, and whatever. But I think now it's become, it's people actually want the beta podcast, me to do the beta podcast. Whereas back then they didn't want me to do it. So was it a mistake to do? Absolutely not.
And while Baited was a drama-focused podcast, another thing that made it so great is that rather than just talking about these squabbles from a distance, the show was able to actively participate in the feuds going on. In the latter half of 2016, Keemstar's relationship with the axis of evil, being Leafy and Grade A Underay, would come to an end when Leafy and Grade both dropped exposed videos about him, where they called him a backstabber and someone who is not to be trusted. This was the absolute peak of hate for Keemstar, during a time when no one would take him seriously, and he could frequently be heard on the podcast talking about how much he hated them. In response to all of the drama, Keemstar said that he had had a prior call with Leafy, where Leafy told him about botting subscribers and likes. Whether any of this was actually true is unknown to this day, as we've seen no proof that Leafy was botting his subscribers. All of this controversy culminated in an episode of Baited where Leafy guest starred, and naturally things got pretty heated.
And then fucking scams him and doesn't even go on the
Grease
trip last
trips.
minute. This dude
Yeah.
has fucked over his friends.
Yeah,
This
Keemstar.
dude, Leafy is
That's
here,
why
has
I didn't
fucked
do
over
it
the people
5
that he
months
does business
before.
with.
That's why
This
exactly
dude has
I did
fucked
it.
over
And you're not
girls.
even gonna sit
This
there and
guy has
fucking let
fucked
anyone
over
talk
literally
because you
every
sit
single
there in your
person
stupid
that
fucking
he is in contact
podcast
with,
and just
you fucked
fucking
over Clown,
regurgitate
and
your
you're
same
fucking
fucking
2 hours.
point over
yeah, he
and
did
over
fuck
again.
you over. He made you wait fucking 2 hours.
Yeah, I think we're fucking good.
when this
Keemstar
was
doesn't want to let
supposed to start. It
anyone
never
fucking
started.
talk.
Let's end it. I think everybody got everything out. Would you agree, Leafy? You got everything out?
I'm good now. I need to get some sleep. It's
Okay.
fucking late.
Well, Keem, I think.
Oh
you
no,
got everything
Keemstar
out.
has not got
I think it's time
everything
to end
out.
this.
Holy shit. I think he quoted at one point in time, I will still be mad at 94 years old.
This format allowed the show to transcend from just something on the sidelines to being the center of attention. It also gives you a rough timeline for every major drama that happened in 2016. If it was popular, chances are it was going to be discussed by the hosts of Baited. For reference for how popular the show was, before any episodes had even been released, the official Baited channel had more than 25,000 subscribers, and by August of the same year, it had reached almost 50,000. Keep in mind, this was in 2016, when these numbers were considered a hell of a lot more impressive than they are today. Today, the channel has almost 300,000 subscribers, although it's worth noting that it's currently losing subs due to a long period of inactivity, which we'll discuss later. That being said, even when the show was going on, it wasn't all fun and games. Multiple episodes of it were scrapped entirely from the original run, with the hosts explaining that the conversations they had just got too heated, to the point where they were extremely vitriolic and they had to re-record. In another episode, Colossal said that they had to re-record the episode because he felt he was constantly defending his friends Leafy and Grade.
So today we're going to kind of redo a episode that we did a few days ago about the Leafy versus iDubbbz thing. And the only reason that we're redoing it, is because I kind of don't want to be in the middle of what's been happening, and I feel like I'm constantly playing the defense attorney to Leafy and Grade, like constantly every single episode. So we're going to dial it down a little bit.
Despite this, one of Colossal's main roles on the show became doing exactly that. Every time Keemstar would criticize Leafy or Grade, Colossal would have to spend most of the show trying to defend them, where Keem was basically bashing Colossal over the head angrily, and Tommy was trying to reason with the both of them, while Colossal was telling Keem why Grade had done nothing wrong.
There's a possibility that he was.
So there's always a possibility. There's always a possibility.
So when you said
that he tried to sell him crack,
when you said on Twitter or in your fucking drama alert that Leafy told me this once, that was a lie.
He did. No, it wasn't.
Could have
no,
been.
it wasn't.
Yes, it could, because it could have been a lie.
It could have been anything.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
You just said yourself that you might have misconstrued what he said.
No, I didn't. What I said was this.
That there's a possibility.
I did not. I didn't. I did not say that.
I think he meant it like
Clown.
anything's possible.
Clown, listen to me.
Overall, the Grade A Under A episode was one of the most angry, with even Tommy and Colossal, two people who usually agree and are on pretty amicable terms, really going at it for the first time on the show.
What did I do wrong?
You insinuated that Grade A molested kids and that's why he got fucking fired from his job.
That's not what I did at all! How fucking dare you!
Oh,
what
you
I said, how
insinuated it.
fucking dare you! I didn't say that at all. I insinuated that he got fired because he's a vicious person, and you can go back to my stream and see that. How dare you, clown! I never would have expected that from you. How fucking dare you!
As the hate train for Leafy grew larger and larger, and the community turned against him entirely, Colossal began to express a lot more disappointment in his friend's actions. But to Keem's dismay, this never amounted to an outright disavowal. There was also an unreleased episode that they were supposed to do with Scarce, according to episode 12 of the show. However, this never came out. But there wasn't always something to talk about on the podcast. The original run only had 13 episodes, with episode 13's guest being Zoey Burger. Zoey was a popular YouTuber and streamer at the time, and as anyone who is watching YouTube at this time will remember, it wasn't for her personality. Naturally, her getting hundreds of thousands of fans by just showing her tits on screen got some of the commentary community interested in talking about her very low effort content. While the Twitch thoughts of today tend to fight the accusations that they use their body for money by getting angry at people calling them slutty, Zoey took a much different approach, seeking to capitalize on the drama to grow her own brand by posting responses to commentators in low-cut shirts. This only made her even more infamous, and in turn made her more money by making 14-year-old commentary fans angry. But the absolute peak of her, dare I say, genius was when she and Keemstar, without talking to each other about it, got a discussion started as to whether or not she was a pedophile in order to squeeze some relevance out of it, which not only left her unscathed, but just made her even more popular and got her a guest spot on the Baited podcast. In November of 2016, Keemstar began talking about how Zoey Burger would be considered a pedo if she was a man, citing a double standard in the industry about adult entertainers posting to a child audience.
If a guy YouTuber in his 20s sends his nudes to his children fans, he's a pedo. If Zoey Burger sends her nudes to her children fans, it's different? Why is it different? How is it different? Is Zoey Burger a fucking pedo?
In a nutshell, Keem is saying that it's wrong for Zoey to make jokes about her audience being a lot younger than they should be to look at her content, and is making the point that if this was a man in her place, they would be called a reprehensible sexual deviant. Zoey responded to Keemstar on her own channel by calling him jealous, which fueled the fire and led to a dialogue being created about the entire topic.
See, it's one thing to make adult content, and if children watch, well, you can't govern what those children do. But it's another thing to actively, knowingly promote to children.
In the comments of the drama alert, you can even see people agreeing with Keem. I never thought I'd agree so strongly with Keem. Zoey is definitely looking questionable at this stage. If she wasn't making all the jokes about dishing out nudes to 12-year-olds, or saying that she'll 100% put them on YouTube, that site that gets all ages watching because it's supposed to be family friendly, she might have gotten away with it. But her sense of, if I joke about it then I can't be attacked for it, has screwed her on this one. Good work, Keem. And while I can kind of see the point this guy is making, all of that goes out the window when you acknowledge that Keem talked about how he started the entire controversy just so that there was something to talk about. And Zoey claims that she fed into it because she wanted to get some relevance out of it.
I'm glad that you said that, because I thought you honestly felt that way, and me bringing up the question of whether or not you are a pedo was because at the time there was nothing going on, and it's my job to be an entertainer.
And that's why I went back on there and I was like, oh, it's because I was moaning for Scarce. It was a shout out to myself to go look at my other video responding to your shout out. We all get it.
I don't really get it. You called her a pedo for entertainment purposes.
And I didn't call her a pedo. I'm a friend with him. It's no big deal.
You know,
I didn't call her a pedo.
My best friend called it dead on Dave. He said this is a work, and that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like you guys.
Well, it was quite brilliant, wasn't it, Zoey?
People. It was amazing. We danced, and it was perfect.
To reiterate, Keemstar sees that there's nothing to talk about, so he makes Twitter videos to get the conversation started about Zoey. Zoey responds and makes it bigger. The entire commentary community starts talking about it, and then Keem runs a drama alert show responding to Zoey, because now he has an excuse to bring attention to the situation on his main channel. Then, once even more people are talking about it, he invites Zoey to Baited, where he admits it was all a ruse. But by then he's already won, and so is the podcast. If not from notoriety alone, the thousands of dollars in ad revenue speaks for itself. Unethical as it may be, it's certainly fascinating. But Keemstar's personal shortcomings speak for themselves here, and ultimately his tendency to want to control situations ended up getting the show into some major trouble. The disagreements between hosts is what made it so entertaining. It was uncomfortable to hear these guys in a shouting match every week, and yet you couldn't look away. The very existence of the show seemed to be in jeopardy by the end of every episode. Unfortunately, this winning formula would eventually contribute to its downfall. The last episode of Baited with the original cast was posted on December 1st of 2016. That same December, a few major conflicts made their way into the public eye, one involving money and the other involving a conflict unintentionally started by Critical's podcast. On December 12th of 2016, Keem posted a tweet saying, "Baited just ended," followed by a tweet longer the next day where he, in broken dyslexic English, detailed his side of the conflict and why he felt that he was in the right. The basics of the story is that there was a debate between the hosts over the payment being received from the podcast. The split of payment between Keem, Tommy, and Clown was that Keemstar would take 50% of the pay, Clown would take 30%, and Tommy would take 20%. Colossal and Tommy were apparently vouching for an equal split, a standard that Keem was unwilling to meet at the time. And this was the story as people publicly knew it. Many people called this difference in payment unreasonable, given how each of the hosts seemingly put forth equal effort on the podcast, and Keemstar already has more than enough capital, whereas Clown and Tommy may need the money more, leading many critics of the situation to call him greedy and unwilling to help his friends out.
The personal effect it would have on Keemstar, because let's face it, he'd just come across as a greedy knobhead.
Keem actually managed to do a pretty good job of justifying why he felt he deserved more pay than the others, citing the fact that he pulled in a lot more viewers to the program. Much of the audience had come from his show and his various promotions of it on Drama Alert. He says that he promoted the show consistently, doing it 12 times on his channel, whereas Clown only promoted it once. He also says that Clown is never around for the podcast and never shows up to record, at least according to I'm Alex's video.
So Keemstar goes on Twitter.com and he starts screaming, saying Colossal is crazy, he wants a pay rise. You guys don't know the real Colossal is crazy. He wants a pay rise, and as well as that, he's never around. Now yeah, Colossal is not really too active on the YouTube hemisphere, but a pay rise, you say? Colossal wants a pay rise just for himself, that's how you're putting it across, Keemstar.
Unfortunately, he didn't cite it anywhere, and I can't find any record of it. But I'm willing to believe it, given how on Baited it was often a running gag that Colossal would disappear from the internet for days on end. It was also made apparent that Colossal wanted to record an episode live, where they debated the change in payment and whether or not anything should happen, which Keem was unwilling to do. On the flip side of this argument over pay, Tommy has been accused of breaking up the show and being greedy ever since, despite the fact that we've seen no such proof. Tommy addressed the accusation on his channel, saying that Keemstar wanted the show to break up, and used some kind of fabrication about a pay rise to get the host arguing.
This is the absolute 100% proof that I did not break up the podcast. I didn't have the power to start or break up that podcast. I was third man in. Everybody knew it, including myself. If you look right here, Keemstar contacts me and says that he's extremely angry with Colossal is crazy. He threatens to end the cast based on demands that Colossal is supposedly making. Turns out he never really even made these demands. This is the beginning of the end. Keemstar wanted to end the cast, and he wanted to either shift the blame to me or Clown.
Clearly, Tommy wasn't the one who wanted an increase in pay, as he was surprised when Keem brought it up. So if it wasn't Tommy who wanted an increase, the only other person that it could be was Colossal is crazy. But why would Clown want more money? According to Tommy, in a stream that he did at the time of the breakup, Clown had mentioned an increase in pay in passing to Keemstar in a call, and Keem took it as a serious assertion and an attack on his revenue stream.
And, initially I took Keem's side. I was like, look, I'll keep my 20%. I think he's absolutely wrong. It turns out it was just a passing conversation. Clown was not demanding to have the Clown was certainly not demanding to hold up the podcast for extra money, and it wouldn't have been extra money for him. It would actually have been extra money for me if Keem was telling the truth, and he wasn't. As we all know.
During this stream, Tommy also says that Keem just didn't want to do the podcast anymore, and that this was a way for him to get out of it. Instead of walking away, he created a conflict. This conflict was only made worse by Keem finding a clip from the official podcast, where the host made fun of Leafy and Colossal for plotting against Keemstar, and supposedly having some plan to insinuate that he was a pedophile.
This kid, being the fucking 15-year-old that he is, goes on this long tirade about how Charlie should do these roast videos on Keemstar, like, oh my god, you should totally insult him, dude, you know what, you're gonna make Keemstar cry, oh my god, he's gonna be so angry. But he kept it up for so fucking long.
It was over an hour and a half.
Charlie started being so uncomfortable. Okay, then Leafy invites in the Colossus, that guy, I mean, Leafy basically just kept going on, like, we gonna strategize this, you make this video, and then if Keemstar even replied, like, even if he can reply, all you gotta do is this. And Colossus is, whatever the fuck his name is, his brilliant plan was, get this, he was gonna upload child porn onto YouTube and show everyone how...
That'll show him.
Okay, backstory. Apparently he had a video of some 16-year-old girl or some dumb bitch like that dancing with Keemstar's name written on her or something, naked. And his plan was uploading that on YouTube and showing people that Keemstar is a pedophile or something. Somehow it eluded him that, if you do that, you're the pedophile.
This guy's sitting on this
culpable.
You should have convinced him to do it. He's sitting on this fucking batch of child porn. He's just like, all right, I'm about to release the bomb, but someone's got to do it. Leafy, I'm not touching it, man. I couldn't do it. I can't do it. And then he just, like, every now and then he would say either me or Kaya to get us back involved, and I'd just be like, good.
But the time span is exactly a few days after Charlie made his Keemstar video, and a few days before, I swear to God, this is literally, not like Leafy literally, but dictionary definition of literally, 2 days later, this fucking dipshit goes on Keemstar's show and acts all buddy-buddy with the guy, does it like a roast session with some other YouTuber where he calls him like a dick sucker or something original like that. And I don't even know what Colossal did, but I remember Charlie and me trying to look this loser up because we wanted to know who this British guy, what he looked like, because in our head we had this image of some derelict loser sitting in his wife's basement, just estranged from his family,
with like files upon files of child porn that he could just release at a given, like, a drop of a...
While Colossal's reply is now deleted, his response to Keem was an explanation where he said the following: "Nobody was framing you for anything. I had the link to the same clip that Grade and Joey Salads put in their videos. I was looking into it at the time, which you knew about anyway, so this shouldn't be that big of a surprise. In any case, I concluded that it was bullshit and I never made it public. It's pretty fucking different than trying to frame you for something. But cheers for not giving me the benefit of the doubt whatsoever." The timing of this happening also made Keemstar particularly angry. At the time when this allegedly happened was January of 2016. Before Leafy and Keem were enemies. Leafy even went on Keem's show the very next day and was laughing with him. If this is true, it would mean that Leafy was conspiring to backstab Keem for months before any of the actual turmoil happened. And with his podcast co-host knowing about it and being directly involved, it made him feel like someone he called a friend knew something the entire time and never said anything about it. If I had to guess, this was mostly a communication error between Colossal, Leafy, and the host of the official podcast. They really don't seem to be the type to try and fabricate some story about this to take Keemstar's side, and it's clear from the rest of that episode that their investment in the drama in general is super minimal. But regardless of their good intentions, this wound up making Keem even more angry at Colossal and escalating the entire thing. But even this point from Keem is called into question, because according to Tommy, him being angry is basically a public theater performance so that he can have another excuse to break up the show.
This video that came out is old information. Information that was talked about in the Baited podcast. Information that was talked about in front of my presence. Keem knew about everything. Clown was searching for dirt on Keem to do a video like he's done with so many YouTubers before. He found this particular pedophile information that was completely false, and he didn't use it. And then this is essentially what happened. So Keem couldn't get rid of me because I didn't do anything wrong. At least not enough to fuck, because basically what Clown's always told Keem.
Not enough to make you the bad guy.
Very early on, I could tell Keem didn't really like me, right? And Clown essentially told him, if you just get rid of him, I'm walking too. Well, he can't do one without the other. So what Keem finally decided is to blow up the podcast.
And in the breakup episode of Baited, Keemstar claimed that he was trying to remove Tommy since the beginning.
Yeah, you're on a tangent right now because I know you don't like Tommy, and I don't like Tommy as a creator standpoint.
I tried to get rid of Tommy like a fucking 3 episodes ago, but Clown made some fucking pact with
This entire thing is a mess, and to this day, most people don't really know why the show ended. It seems to me like Keem wanted it to end anyway, and was just sick of having Tommy around for whatever reason, but I doubt he'll ever say outright one way or the other. While Keem seems to have a different view of why the podcast ended than Clown or Tommy, the friendships between the hosts were completely sour, at least for the time, and there was no way the show would be able to continue. According to Keemstar, Tommy and Clown had made a pact before the podcast, stipulating that if one was kicked from the show, the other would go as well. Ultimately, this resulted in both of them leaving, and Keem having to replace the podcast host with Anything for Views, who at the time was relatively unknown to the commentary community, and Andy Milonakis, a very odd pick for a host on a show that is centered around YouTube drama. And while these new hosts did yield some entertaining moments and episodes in the months following the breakup, it just wouldn't be the same as it was before the split. Andy did eventually leave and was replaced by by Clown, and Chad definitely did a pretty decent job of hosting, but I think the show was a little more serious in tone than his demeanor is really good for, and he's much better on his own podcast than he is here. While it is unfortunate that the Baited podcast is no longer a staple of the community and that the hosts have left it dead in the water, I don't really want it any other way. Baited was so good when it was around, not just because of the people on it or the podcast itself, but also because of the atmosphere that was created at the time. 2016 is seen as the golden age of YouTube drama by many, and Baited really was a product of its time in that way. A consistent stream of interesting topics and relevant guests to join the show, and 3 people who had a unique personal relationship that, when thrown together, created the perfect storm for a podcast. And while the show will likely never come back in full, and it's doubtful that another YouTube podcast will live up to its relevance or quality in this community, it's still important to remember it for what it was. And once a year, the old cast of Baited still get together to do an episode. It's not 2016, and it never will be, but the episodes are really enjoyable as someone who was a big fan back in the day. Decayed though it may be, Baited will always hold a special place in the hearts of viewers for years to come. I've been Turkey Tom. Thanks for watching, and until next time. This video is sponsored by Raycon. Here's a video of me wearing my Raycon earbuds, which I love to wear. I've actually had this pair for over a year now, and I'm happy to say that they provided me with a quality product. The audio quality is just as good as all of the other premium brands that are on the market, and what's great is that they come in at just half the price of the competition. Whether I'm listening to 9 Inch Nails in the dead of night and sipping on some toxic juices, or screaming along to one of my favorite bangers, my Raycons work super well. The E25s are the ones I would recommend, with 6 hours of continuous playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, and a compact design. They're great for anyone in the market for a new pair of wireless earbuds. They're even noise isolating, and come in a variety of colors. Click the link in the description to get 15% off your order right now. Leave me alone.